Let's talk about math for a minute, a sensitive subject for many people. Did you know that we've been learning and teaching math in a very ineffective way all these years? That's just one thing I learned during my interview with Miss Mona Ieil, elementary math teacher, professional elementary math coach, and host of the Honest Math podcast. Another thing I learned is that I, like many other people, have math trauma. This week on Legendary Educator, I discuss with Miss Ieil how math trauma is developed in young people and how to overcome math trauma. We also discuss a more effective way to teach math. And at the end of our conversation, Miss Ieil breaks down for us a math lesson that you can recreate in your classroom. So stick around. Hello teachers from around the world, and welcome to Legendary Educator, the podcast that helps you improve your performance in the classroom and have more engaged and motivated students. My name is Ramis Takawi. I'm a teacher and instructional coach, and I created this podcast because I'm passionate about education and about students achieving their highest potential. Before we begin, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes as they drop. All right, let's get to know our guest this week.
Hello, my name is Mona. My students call me Miss Ieil. I am currently a math coach and consultant in Chicago. I've taught 1st through 6th grade for the last 15 years here in Chicago. And my favorite teacher when I was growing up was my 5th grade teacher named Miss M, mostly because she was the first person I had in elementary school that truly created a classroom community where I felt seen. And I didn't know that at the time, but looking back on it and thinking about why was she my favorite teacher, it's because she welcomed me and she truly saw my identity and helped me maximize my strengths and work through my growth areas with dignity while being in this really fun classroom. And I think everybody in that classroom felt that way. And so that just led to a really great year with Miss M.
So I read your bio on your website, and it says that you were never a math person when you were younger, and then something happened. There was a transformation. I'd like to know more about that first.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if I would be on podcasts talking about teaching math, I would be like, yeah, that's funny. No way. I call myself a former math avoider because all through school, I was affirmed that I was good at reading. I was good at talking. I was a debater, and all these doors were opened up for me because of that, right? Oh, you're going to make a great X, Y, or Z in your career because you're good at these things. But never did anyone tell me I was good at math. And I didn't think I was good at math. And I just did the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
In high school, cheated my way through all the math classes I was required to take. Oh yeah. And also, I was a really good student. So I could memorize what they were telling me to memorize and then do the study guide and reproduce it on the test. I could do that. And I did that in college. Same thing. I'd go to the study groups and I'd learn the things and reproduce it on the test. But I never invested in math and I never saw myself as a mathematician. Okay, then I get in the classroom and I'm teaching 1st and 2nd grade and I love it and it's so fun and we're on the carpet and I'm reading them stories and we're building, all these cool units around integrated units. It's so fun. And then we get to that 45 minutes of math that I have to teach. Math is coming up.
What do I do?
Yeah. And I'm just bumming on having to teach math, so we get through it every day. That's the mentality. Get through it. Just get through it. I did all the things I was supposed to do. They had whiteboards. They used the blocks. We got through it, but I didn't love it. And then I had an experience with a math coach. She came into my classroom and she's observing my lesson and it was terrible. I'm just pulling teeth trying to get kids to participate. I don't even know why I'm teaching this lesson other than the fact that it was the next one in the book. And that's all the thought I gave to it. And she says to me later, how was that? What was that? How was that lesson? How'd it go? And I'm like, yeah, you can come back tomorrow. It might be better. I don't know. It wasn't great. And she's just like, yeah, like, I've got an idea, not an idea. She said something to the effect like, I've got this like way of teaching math that you might be interested in.
Mm.
Would you ever like be open to talking about teaching math in a different way? And I was like, I guess if like, she was the resident principal at the time. So I think she like had to talk to me too. She had to do a project. So I was feeling compassionate toward her of like, sure, I'll humor you. I'll hear about this. And she modeled a lesson a few weeks later in my classroom. And what I noticed was that like everything I valued about teaching, which was like that students had their own voice and they could like share their ideas and, that they had an opportunity to learn by doing. That was what she was showing me in this lesson. And I was like, hold up, you can teach math like this? Like you can have a whole discussion about math. And I just was floored. I was like, okay, I'm in. Like the way you got them engaged, they were exploring on their own. And then you brought them together into a discussion and everybody like learned something. They could articulate something that they had learned. This is way different than open your workbooks and let's work through the problems. So that being said, I went all in and I like to call myself a learn it all. So I just learned it all, read all the books, listened to all the things.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I got to figure this out. So I figured out some things with her help. And, I realized there was like decades of research on how we should be teaching math differently. And everybody in my school and everybody I knew that was a teacher was teaching it the way we had been taught. And I was like, wait, this is all wrong. So that was when I kind of committed to like, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it different. And I learned how to multiply when I was 28. Like I learned that multiplication.
Oh no.
Right. Like right alongside my third graders making arrays. And then it occurred to me that multiplication means groups of. And I really wish somebody would have told me that when I was 8 instead of 28, because wow, would that have made things a lot simpler. And I just went on to continue to teach math or all the things to my third graders. And then I got moved up to 5th and 6th grade where I taught math. And I panicked because I wasn't ready for 5th and 6th grade math yet. So I had to like learn it right alongside them and do a lot of work to learn the math. But I was committed because I knew that and I had seen the results that like allowing students to explore math and build understanding, built their investment and built their math identity. And kids weren't leaving my classroom the way I left classrooms, which was believing I was not a math person. Instead, my students were leaving with power and agency as mathematicians.
Okay, before I ask you the, I guess, obvious question, I first want to ask you this. You said that there was decades and decades of research of the proper way of doing math, but yet everybody was still doing the traditional way. Why do you think that is?
I mean,
it's there, it exists, right?
It
like
is.
Why are we not, sort of utilizing and like banking on the new stuff, which is obviously more, effective? Why are we still stuck on the old method?
Yeah, I think I can think of 2 reasons right off the top of my head. Number 1 is because a lot of people who teach elementary school have math trauma. Like like they don't see themselves as math teachers and they see themselves as, reading teachers, writing teachers.
English and social studies, history, all the fluffy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't, they themselves are carrying a lot of baggage from their experience that like similar to mine, right? That I described.
Yeah.
So I think there's that. So I think it's hard to change teaching practice when you don't have the buy-in of your teachers because they haven't had time to work through their own baggage and their own relationship with math. And then the other thing is we have all this research, but sometimes a lot of times it's not practical, right? It's hard to make that shift to like, what is it that we do? Okay. So you want kids to explore and problem solve, but like how? And our curriculums don't support it. So we have a gap, right? We have a gap between research and current practice. And the thing right now that we rely on is our curriculum. And what we know is that our books and our curriculum, that reinforces procedures, and just do it this way and do it quickly and get the answer and move on, where that doesn't lead to real understanding.
Interesting.
So that's what
it's the challenge of the mindset. It's not as well, you can't say it's not as practical, because obviously it has better results. So it's just the difficulty of changing.
I think so.
It's the change that's so difficult, especially since, as you put it, a lot of the teachers have math trauma, which I can relate to.
Yeah.
Which I can very much relate to.
Yeah. And I think, it's hard to facilitate students exploring math and doing math in different ways if you don't have a solid foundation of understanding yourself. Right. So if I only know one way to multiply fractions, then I just have to teach you that way. But if I understand lots of models and strategies for multiplying fractions, then I can facilitate a math classroom where you can all come at it in different ways. You can draw a picture, you can use manipulatives, all of that. And we can build our understanding, because ultimately I'm making the instructional choices, but you're coming at it all in your own ways. And then I'm here understanding the ways you do it. But I'm able to see that and ask the questions to nudge you along in that progression.
Okay, well, now I need to ask you the obvious question. All right,
okay.
You need to elaborate as much as you can on the other method, or the modern method, or the effective method, because again, I am that teacher. I would never ever teach math. I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. You know what I mean? I was a high school teacher. I was English, history, social studies, all the fluffy stuff. I would never touch math if somebody asked me.
No. I don't think English and social studies is a fluffy thing. I think it is very valuable. But
it's valuable, but it's not. It's not mathematics, right? It's not algebra. It's not calculus. It's not trigonometry. It's not. You know what I mean? It's not that stuff, which just aches me to even think about. I guess it's a trauma. You were talking
it is.
about.
It feels so formal, right?
Yes,
exactly. I can tell people I could tell people all sorts of stuff about me, and they could just whatever, listen. And then next thing you know, I'm like, yeah, I'm a math teacher, or I'm a math coach. And they're like, whoa, you must be smart.
So smart.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm not calling it fluffy stuff because it's easy. No, but I mean, it allows for conversation. It allows for abstract, thinking. It allows for all fun stuff, like fun activities, fun, debates, that kind of stuff, the fluffy stuff. Right. But mathematics, as I remember it, it's a pencil. It's not a pen. It's a pencil, and the exercises and the questions and all that. And you're sitting down on your desk and you're just writing, solving problems, right? It's not as fluffy as English and social studies. What is different in your approach, or this modern approach that you're talking about?
Yeah, I really like to think about it like it's the empowering approach, right? Because okay, so to go back to one thing you were saying too, is it is very common, maybe in high school. I don't have much experience in high school other than being a high schooler, but in a K-8 school, it's very common for teachers to say in front of students, well, I'm not good at math. Or go down there and talk to her. I'm not good at math. But never would you hear a teacher say, oh, honey, I can't help you with that reading. I'm not good at reading.
You're right. Yeah. I'm not good with English.
Yeah. Don't ask me how to spell something, I can't spell. Right. We might say that, but not in that same way of I don't read. Yeah, you do. Because society would not be okay with the fact that as a teacher, I can't read. But society has made it okay that I'm not good at math. Right. And if I am good at math, then I'm equated to Steve Urkel. Remember that guy on TV, or
we're dating ourselves.
Or all these other characters that are nerdy, right? And super smart
with a calculator in your pocket.
right, exactly. Right. My pocket protector. I forgot it today. I'm just kidding. But I want math to be empowering to every kid, so that they have an identity as a mathematician. Whether or not every child is going to go into a STEM field job, is up in the air, right? But I'll tell you this, my husband has a physics degree, but he also was an electrician. Yeah, right. Smart. But he also has an electrician license, and he was an electrician for 10 years after grad school. But he tells me he used more math as an electrician than he did in a lot of his coursework in physics.
That's interesting.
So when you think about cutting pipe, everything in Chicago is in pipe. All the wires are in the walls in pipe. Bending pipe to angles, measuring it, like laying out like floor plans of where the outlets are going to be, where the lights are laid out, all of that, measuring to make sure that the light is centered in the room. All of that is math. All of it.
Right.
And so no matter what our students' jobs are going to be, they're going to include math. And for so long, we've had real world math, like what I just described, and school math, which is what you described. Pencil, a worksheet, problems, finish it, turn it in. The teacher will tell you if you're right and move on.
Right.
But I want kids to be empowered to see themselves as mathematicians, because mathematicians collaborate. Mathematicians discuss with their partners and they debate on what's right and wrong. If we want students to solve problems of our world right now, climate change, I don't know, the ethics of AI, all of these things that we are going to be looking at in the future, they have to be problem solvers. They have to use math to solve the problems of our world. We can't teach them like we taught them math in 1970. We have to start teaching them to be empowered with math. So how do we do that?
How do we do that?
Yeah. How do we do that? That's what we got to talk about,
That's
right?
A golden question.
Well, first of all, we have to be intentional about the community we build of mathematicians, because like I just described, it's okay to say you're not good at math, right? It's okay to identify as that. Not anymore. Now we have to build this strong classroom community where every single person that enters is a valued expert. And so that comes along with a lot, right? Showing kids that mistakes are part of learning, building norms for learning that make it safe to take risks and make mistakes, and holding kids to high expectations, knowing students, like so many things that we know about building community, but let's make it math. Let's consider what our students' math trauma is that they walk in with. And let's think about how we make our community a safe place for that trauma. To rewrite that, right? We're intentional about the mindsets that we allow in our classrooms, that we ourselves express in our classrooms. And we use our teaching methods to show students that they are valued experts. So how do we do that? Well, we allow them to bring what they're already an expert at to class every day. So our students know a lot of things that we never taught them. Right? They go out in the world, they have their family, their culture. They know so much more than what we taught them. Let them bring that in. I have a 5 and a 3-year-old. They know all about fractions, let me tell you.
What?
All of these full-size candy bars that people hand out for Halloween now. And we're trying to make sure that they don't eat too much candy, right? So they're, of course, pulling out these full-size candy bars that they want to eat. And I'm like, nope. We're going to eat this over the next 4 days, kids. And so I'm breaking it into pieces and giving them pieces. And they're like, that's not equal. My kid knows that she got 3 out of 4 pieces and he only got 1 out of 4 pieces. Like all these things about equity. And kids know this. 4 and 5 and 3-year-olds know this. They know what half is. They know what a fourth is. But a lot of times when they come to school, we go, oh, no, you can't do fractions till 3rd grade.
Right.
Right. We gatekeep that because I'll teach you that when you're ready. But kids have a lot of expertise. And so if we create spaces in our classrooms for students to solve problems where they can bring in what they already know and show that, then they will start to see that they are an expert in math, that they have expertise. And so how is by creating or using math tasks, math problems that are open-ended. And so this is kind of like in the the world I live in, I feel like everybody knows about this, but maybe not. So let's talk about what is a math task versus like, something that's not. So an open, high quality math task might be something like there are 4 full-size candy bars and 5 kids want to split those up equally and share them. How much candy bar will each child get? Now, somebody very easily could use an algorithm to figure that out. Somebody could go and get chocolate bars and start breaking them up. Somebody could use Post-it notes, right? Here's a chocolate bar. Here's a chocolate bar. There's a million ways that you could go about solving this, drawing rectangles, all that. You could start to think about splitting it all up into fifths, or maybe splitting up just one into fifths, right? So when we give students an open-ended task and say, solve it, and let them do what makes sense to them, we can do a couple things. We can give them choice, which gives them that ownership, right? Like, this is mine, my idea. It's the same thing we do when we go into the library and get the book that you are most excited to read. And I don't care what book you bring out of there. I'm going to help you learn to read that book because now you're excited, right? It's the hook. I got you. Right. You really want to learn to read that, book that's way over your level? Fine. We're going to do what we can. So same kind of thing. We're going to open it up, give you choice, because now you have some ownership over this of like, look what I can do. And then because students are showing us what they know how to do, we can look at their work and say, oh, that's what you know how to do. Okay. Now I'm starting to learn more about you as who you are as a learner. And as teachers, we know that the first step to helping students or differentiating for them or pushing their thinking or extending their thinking is knowing them. So when we know our student, then we can ask the right question to nudge them along. Well, if you're in 6th grade and you're still having to like hold the chocolate bars to figure out 4 chocolate bars divided by 5 kids, then we got to nudge a little quicker, right? But if you're 5 and you're doing that, like, cool, let's go. Like, we can linger there at playing with the chocolate bars for a little longer. But then the magic happens when we start to talk about it. So let's say we're in a 3rd grade classroom and we have that problem, 4 chocolate bars shared by 5 kids. And somebody used Post-it notes and cut them all into fifths and arranged them, right? Okay, well, this one gets fifths, this one gets the fifths, blah, blah, blah. Then somebody else said, well, I could, just do an algorithm. And they did some adding and subtracting. Then what we do is we bring those to the carpet. We sit in our circle, just like we would in if we were reading a book out loud, right? So sit in a circle. Let's talk about it. Let's like share our ideas. Let's look up here at the evidence of student thinking, right? Because now we're not going to speak from evidence from a book. We're going to speak from evidence of our students' math thinking. So we've got this kid who did drawings. We've got this kid who did some algorithms, some adding or some subtracting. And we can talk about what are the same about those? What's different about those? How did this person divide? How did that person divide? And we can start to compare these models and strategies, and students can start to deepen their understanding by agree. Which one's more efficient might be a question I ask, right? Well, I think it's more efficient to draw the picture because then you can actually see it. Well, I think it's more efficient to just start subtracting and passing them out by subtracting unit fractions. Okay, well, what if I disagree with both of you and I think that, my way is the most efficient? Then we can start a little debate. All of that leads to depth of understanding, right? Because it's not just me doing the thing, but it's me stepping back and saying, what am I thinking, explaining my thinking, and then comparing my thinking with others.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't remember discussing anything in math class.
I know, right? I know. That's exactly how I feel.
I remember the teacher talking for a bit, explaining how to do it. And then a few questions during class time for the practice, and then a bunch more questions for the homework for the extra practice. And then you go back next day and it's a quiz and it's done and we move on, right? I do not remember a discussion of what do you think. I don't remember a discussion of different ways, different approaches. I don't remember any of that. So what you're saying now is it's interesting. It piqued my interest.
Well, and I think that your experience is so common, right? At the end, the teacher would say, Are there any questions?
No.
And if
Okay,
you were
let's
the
move
kid
on.
that had the, yeah, exactly. If you were the kid that had the question, everybody was mad at you because it's like, can we just get out of here? Right.
Right. I want you to go through an example of a lesson plan. I mean, you choose any topic you want, it doesn't matter, but just go through, your version of the lesson plan of how to begin it, how to engage the students, how to make sure everybody understands, how to end it.
Absolutely. So I through all of that learning that I described earlier and all this research kind of deducted into 10 years of practicing this in my own classroom, I've kind of like reduced it down to a daily routine that we do. And I call it word problem workshop because we're always working through a word problem. I like to give kids 2 word problems. So we start with one that we all work through. And then at the end, it's kind of like an exit ticket. Take what you learned and then apply it. So it's got 4 steps. Word problem workshop has 4 steps. It's launch the task, grapple with the task, discuss it, and then reflect. So let's go through all of them. So number 1 is launch. This is where I make sure that students understand the context of what I'm talking about. I tell them the problem like a story. Get everybody engaged in this. A lot of times our math problems are like talking about like buying groceries or forming groups for a field trip. Like no kid buys groceries. So we gotta like contextualize it for kids. So like making sure the context matches their understanding. But then also if it is about cutting up a chocolate bar, making sure that they understand what a chocolate bar even is, right? So let's consider the problem 49 plus 16, but give it a context. So it could be something like, let's call him Wally. Wally has 49 Pokemon cards. He gets 16 more for his birthday. How many Pokemon cards does Wally have now? Okay, maybe like a 2nd grade question or a 1st grade question, maybe.
So the first thing you're doing is making it relevant because a lot of these kids like Pokemon cards, probably have them. I know my kid does.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's in love with them. I don't even know what they do, but he carries them around.
I know
all
what
the
they
time.
do. I know what they do. They lay on our floor. They lay on our they lay on our floor for us to pick them up. That's what they do.
Yes, that's a good
I'm like,
answer.
no more Pokemon cards because all I do is pick them up.
They're everywhere.
So make it relevant, right?
Okay,
like or I mean, it could be even better. We could be like, he gets 49, his mom tells him to pick up 16 more, whatever. Okay. So
that's subtraction.
There's our context.
He loses 19.
Yeah, exactly. Mom throws away 19 while he's sleeping. And then she cries because that's $28. But I digress. Okay. So
right, exactly.
The whole idea here is that kids understand the context, right? And so then they're already starting to think like, okay, it's what kind of situation is this? I'm not asking them to circle keywords or do anything like that, right? And I'm really trying to keep it open-ended because again, I want them to bring their expertise to this problem. This isn't about me. I don't want to take away their opportunity to problem solve. I want to give this to them in that zone of proximal development, right? Where they know enough to get started, but they don't know too much where they don't have to think, where they can check out. I checked out all of math class because my teachers did all the work for me. They told me exactly what to do, and all I had to do was write it down.
Just copy paste it.
Yeah. Plug in the new numbers and follow through. I don't want to do that for my students. I want them doing the work, right? So that's the launch. I'm going to say, okay, kids, go off, grapple. Grapple time means that you are going to grapple with a problem, persevere, work through it, problem solve. Now we do a lot of building up of what that looks like, why we do that, what we do when we get stuck, like all sorts of things, right? That's where you build that community and that culture of math problem solvers. And while the students are grappling, I'm getting to know what they know. I'm walking around, I'm asking questions, I'm looking and seeing where they're at. I'm swooping in like that coach, that really good coach that is watching you do the thing and sees you struggle and sees about when you're about to hit the wall and then give that little nugget. I'm going to just give you just enough to get you over it so you can keep going. But I'm not going to take away the thinking. I'm not going to take the pencil out of your hand and show you how to do it. I'm going to keep the pencil in your hand. Another thing I'm doing during the grapple is I'm deciding whose work we're going to talk about. Because what I didn't describe is I have a learning goal, right? As we all should and do. I got a learning goal. So I know where we're going. So I'm choosing students' work to feature in our discussion. So then grapple time's over. We all come to the carpet. We sit in a circle. Maybe we stand if we're older or sit in chairs. I don't know. And we get into a circle. Why a circle? Because everyone takes up the same amount of space. Nobody's behind anybody or in front of anybody. Everybody can be seen. Because again, this isn't about my understanding or validating you as being right or you as being right. This is about all of the experts coming together and collaborating. So we might have some like talk structures during the discussion where we get into small groups or pairs or whatever. But we're now going to have a discussion about these two students' work that I picked. Now, remember, it was 49 Pokemon cards. He got 16 more. So maybe a student broke it up by place values. The student added 40 and 10 to get 50. And then they added the ones, the 9 and the 6 and got 15. And then they added it together, 65. And then maybe another student drew those base 10 blocks, you know, the ones that are 10 cubes together to represent a 10. They're all stuck together in the long stick. So maybe they drew those 4 sticks for 40 and 9 ones. And then 1 stick for 16 and then 6 ones. And then they did the same thing that the student with the numbers did, but they did it with the blocks. So now we're in the discussion and I'm going to ask questions like, how are these strategies the same and how are they different? Which one's more efficient? Which one's most effective? Right? All these things I'm going to be asking them, and kids are going to be sharing their ideas and I'm going to be pushing their thinking. Why do you think that? Explain more. How does this strategy relate to what you did on your paper? And we're going to, you know, kind of funnel our discussion down to saying, oh, the base 10 blocks, what we do with the base 10 blocks, we can do with numbers and number sentences. Cool. And then I'm going to say, it's time to reflect. And I'm going to go and I'm going to say, here's a new problem. And I'm going to give them a problem that's maybe a different context, or that is a different context and different numbers. So now I might say, there's 37 mini brands. You know, that's another annoying toy. Those little tiny, like, I don't know. They're like food. They come in these mystery balls. Anyway, people will know.
Yeah,
My kids have these as well, and they're everywhere. So they're these like little, they look like Kraft macaroni and cheese, and they look like all sorts of the food we eat, but it's like teeny tiny, like the size of a quarter.
I'm so glad my kids don't know about them.
Don't. They're also
so happy.
Okay. So there's 37 mini brands. You know, Wally gets 14 more. Again, it's an intentional choice in the number so that there's a regrouping, right? And I want you to go back to your seats and I want you to find out how many mini brands does he have now? Okay. So now everybody's going to take what we just did and experienced and learned, hopefully from the discussion, and apply it. Some kids, they're still going to use the math manipulatives. They're still going to use the blocks. Some kids are still going to use a number line, which we didn't even talk about, but they did in their work and they like that strategy and they're going to do it again. And some kids are going to go, hey, I'm going to try out that add the ones, add the tens, add them together with the number sentences. I'm going to try that.
So do you have the kids sharing their strategies with the other kids?
Sometimes that's one strategy, right?
This is how I got to my answer?
Yes. In the discussion, that's how they do it.
Okay.
The 2 kids that I chose share their strategies. We write it up on a board so that everybody can see it and we can refer back to it. And then, kids can refer back when they're in their reflection piece of like, look back at that kid's strategy. See if you can try that one. And then they apply it. And then it's instant formative assessment. So I can see, did you get it? Did you not get it?
I wish we had more time because this is really like therapy.
I love it.
Okay, so I'm intrigued and I want to learn more about this. What do I do? Where do I go?
Yep. So you can go to monamath.com/WPW. It stands for Word Problem Workshop. That is where I have all the details about this particular way of teaching. And I have a teacher training there too. So if you want to even like jump in farther and say, teach me all the things, Mona, I will do that there. I also have a weekly podcast called Honest Math Chat. So if you just want to hear my voice a little more, come hang out on Mondays on Honest Math Chat.
And on the podcast, what do you talk about? Like, what are some of the topics? What are some of the episodes? Give me some examples.
Yep, basically all of this. Like, so the grapple time, why grapple? What's the point? Why not just tell kids things like discussion strategies, like we were talking about? So really breaking down those 4 things and talking about what each of them are and giving you some real strategies on how to do it in your classroom, as well as talking about building that classroom community, the container in which this workshop fits in.
Wow, that sounds really helpful, actually. Really helpful. Okay, so I'm going to put all your links in the show notes. So if anybody wants to, check you out, check out the podcast or the courses or the help, I'm going to put all that in the show notes.
Awesome.
Miss Ieil, it was a pleasure. I thank you so much. It really was therapy to me
I love it.
from my math trauma. And yeah, thank you for your time. I do appreciate it. And I hope we talk again soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That's our show for today. Share this episode with your teacher friends who might benefit from listening to it. Don't forget to rate this episode and subscribe. I'm Ramos Takawi, and this is Legendary Educator. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.